Napoleon Bonaparte was a French military general who crowned himself the first emperor of France. His Napoleonic code remains a model for governments worldwide. Napoleon Bonaparte was born in Ajaccio on the French island of Corsica on August 15, 1769. Napoleon was the fourth and second surviving child. His father's name was Carlo Bonaparte, who was a lawyer, and his mother was Legia Romolino. The year before Napoleon's birth, France captured Corsica from the city-state of Genoa, Italy. His father, Carlo Bonaparte, had at first supported the nationalists siding with their leader, Pasquale Paoli. But after Paoli was forced to flee the island, his father Carlo switched his allegiance to the French. After doing so, his father was appointed assessor of the judicial district of Ajaccio in 1771, a job that eventually enabled his father to enroll his two sons, Joseph and Napoleon, in France College d'Auton. Eventually, Napoleon ended up at the military college of Breny, where he studied for 5 years before moving on to the military academy in Paris. In 1785, while Napoleon was at the academy, his father died of stomach cancer. This propelled Napoleon to take the reign as the head of the family. Graduating early from the military academy, Napoleon, now second lieutenant of artillery, returned to Corsica in 1786. Back home, Napoleon got behind the Corsican resistance to the French occupation, siding with his father's former ally, Pasquale Paoli. But the two soon had a falling out, and when a civil war in Corsica began in April 1793, Napoleon, now an enemy of Paoli, and his father relocated to France, where they assumed the French version of their name, Bonaparte. Napoleon's return to France from Corsica began with a service with the French military, where he rejoined his regiment in June 1793. The turmoil of the French Revolution created opportunities for ambitious military leaders like Napoleon. The young leader quickly sought his support for the Jacobins, a far-left political movement and the most well-known and popular political club from the French Revolution. In 1792, 3 years after the French Revolution had begun, France was declared a republic. The following year, King Louis XVI was executed. Ultimately, these acts led to the rise of Maximilien de Robespierre. The year of 1793 and 1794 came to be known as the Reign of Terror, in which many as 40,000 people were killed. Eventually, the Jacobins fell from the power and Robespierre was executed. In 1795, the Directory, the French revolutionary government, took control of the country, a power it would assume until 1799. After falling out of favor with Robespierre, Napoleon came into a good grace of the Directory in 1795 after he saved the government from counter-revolutionary forces. For his efforts, Napoleon was soon named commander of the army. In addition, he was a trusted advisor of the Directory on military matters. In 1796, Napoleon took the helms of the army of Italy, a post he had been coveting. The army, just 30,000 strong, disgruntled and underfed, was soon turned around by a young military commander, Napoleon. Under his direction, the reinvigorated army won numerous crucial victories against the Austrians, greatly expanded the French Empire, and squashed an internal threat by the Royalists who wished to return France to the monarchy. All of these successes helped make Napoleon the military's brightest star. Napoleon married Josephine de Beauharnais, widow of General Alexandre de Beauharnais, guillotined during the Reign of Terror and the mother of 2 children, on March 9, 1796 in a civil ceremony. Josephine was unable to give him a son, so in 1810 Napoleon arranged for the annulment of their marriages so that he could wed Mary Louise, the 18-year-old daughter of the Emperor of Austria. The couple had a son, Napoleon II, also known as the King of Rome, on March 20, 1811. On July 1, 1798, Napoleon and his army traveled to the Middle East to undermine Great Britain's empire by occupying Egypt and disrupting English trade routes to India. But his military campaign proved disastrous. On August 1, 1798, Admiral Horatio Nelson's fleet decimated Napoleon's force in the Battle of Nile. Napoleon's image and that of France were greatly harmed by the loss, and in show of newfound confidence against the commander, Britain, Austria, Russia and Turkey formed a new coalition against France. In the spring of 1799, French armies were defeated in Italy, forcing France to give up much of the peninsula. In October, Napoleon returned to France, where he was welcomed as a popular military leader. Following his 1799 return to France, Napoleon participated in an event known as the Coup of 18 Brumaire, a bloodless coup that overthrew the French Directory. The Directory was replaced by a three-member councilate after a series of political and military machination orchestrated in a large party by Napoleon's brother, Napoleon Bonaparte. Napoleon became first consul, making him France's leading political figure. At the Battle of Marigny in 1800, Napoleon's forces defeated the Austrians and drove them away from the Italian peninsula. This military victory cemented Napoleon's authority as first consul. Additionally, with the Treaty of Amiens in 1802, the war-weary British agreed to peace with the French. This peace would only last for a year. The Napoleonic Wars were a series of European wars lasting from 1803 to Napoleon's second abdication of power in 1815. In 1803, in part to raise funds for war, France sold its North American Louisiana territory to the United States for $15 million, a transaction known as the Louisiana Purchase. Napoleon then returned to a war with Britain, Russia and Austria. He made himself the Emperor of France in 1804. In 1805, the British registered an important naval victory against France at the Battle of Trafalgar, which led Napoleon to scrap his plans to invade England. Instead, he set his sights on Austria and Russia and beat back both militaries in the Battle of Austerlitz. Other victories soon followed, allowing Napoleon to greatly expand the French Empire and paving the way for loyalists to his government to be installed in Holland, Italy, Naples, Sweden, Spain, and Westphalia. To keep hold of power, the new emperor made heavy use of censorship to prevent the expression of any opposition. He also made sure that numerous paintings of him were drawn and displayed prominently in public buildings. On March 21, 1804, Napoleon instituted the Napoleonic Code, otherwise known as the French Civil Code, parts of which are still in use around the world today. The Napoleonic Code forbade privilege based on birth, allowed freedom of religion, and stated that government jobs must be given to the most qualified. The terms of the code are the main basis for many countries' civil codes throughout Europe and North America. With the new guidelines, the First Council was permitted to appoint ministers, generals, civil servants, magistrates, and even members of the legislative assemblies. Napoleon would of course be the one who would fulfill the First Council duties. In February 1800, the new constitution was easily accepted. Under his direction, Napoleon turned his reforms to the country's economic, legal system and education, and even the church, as he reinstated Roman Catholicism as a state religion. He also negotiated a European peace, which lasted just 3 years before the start of Napoleonic Wars. His reforms proved popular. In 1802, he was elected consul for life, and 2 years later, he was proclaimed Emperor of France. During these years, Napoleon re-established a French aristocracy, eliminated in the French Revolution, and began handing out titles of nobility to his loyal friends and family as his empire continued to expand across much of Western and Central Continental Europe. In 1812, France was devastated when Napoleon's invasion of Russia turned out to be a colossal failure, and the beginning of the end of Napoleon. Hundreds of thousands of soldiers in Napoleon's Grand Army were killed or badly wounded. Out of an original fighting force of some 600,000 men, just 10,000 soldiers were still fit for battle. News of the defeat reinvigorated Napoleon's enemies both inside and outside of France. A fell coup was attempted while Napoleon led his charge against Russia, while the British began to advance through French territories. With international pressure mounting and his government lacking the resources to fight back against his enemy, Napoleon surrendered to Allied force on March 30, 1814. On April 6, 1814, Napoleon was forced to abdicate power and went into exile on island of Elba in the Mediterranean Sea of Italy. On February 26, 1815, after less than a year in exile, Napoleon skipped Elba and sailed to French mainland with a group of more than 1,000 supporters. On March 20th, he returned to Paris, where he was welcomed by cheering crowds. The new king, Louis XVIII, fled, and Napoleon began what came to be known as his 100 Days Campaign. Upon Napoleon's return to France, a coalition of allies, the Austrians, British, Prussians, and Russians, who considered the French emperor an enemy, began to prepare for a war. Napoleon raised a new army and planned to strike preemptively, defeating the allied force one by one before they could launch a united attack against him. On June 16, 1815, Napoleon led French troops into Belgium and defeated the Prussians. 2 days later, he was defeated by the British, reinforced by Prussian fighters at the Battle of Waterloo. It was a humiliating loss, and on June 22, 1815, Napoleon abdicated his powers. In an effort to prolong his dynasty, he pushed to have his young son, Napoleon II, named emperor, but the coalition rejected the offer. After Napoleon was finally defeated at the Battle of Waterloo in 1815, he abdicated his throne and surrendered to the British. Rather than execute him and potentially turn him into a martyr, the British placed him in an exile on one of the most isolated places on earth, the British-held island of St. Helena in the South Atlantic Ocean. For the most part, Napoleon was free to do as he pleased at his new home. He had leisurely mornings, wrote often, and read a lot. But the tedious routine of life soon got to him, and he often sought himself indoors. By 1817, Napoleon's health had been deteriorating, and he showed the early signs of the stomach ulcer or possibly cancer. In early 1821, he was bedridden and growing weaker day by day. In April of that year, he dictated his last will. I wish my ashes to rest on the banks of the Seine, in the midst of that French people which I have loved so much. I died before my time, killed by the English oligarchy and its hired assassins. Napoleon died on May 5, 1821, on the island of St. Helena at the age of 51. Napoleon's tomb is located in Paris, France, in the Dôme des Invalides. Napoleon stood about 5 feet 7 inches tall, making him slightly taller than the average Frenchman of his time. Thank you.